Hugo. It's not like a normal Martin Scorsese film. that's for sure.
Well, there's fewer people getting killed.
Well, yeah,
none.
Yeah, well, off screen.
Yeah.
There's
two.
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right. You're right.
So to speak. Well, actually, everyone dies. Sorry.
Eventually, everybody dies.
But, to talk more about this movie, what do you think about what's going on in politics right now?
What?
Well, exactly. Because this one thing about this movie that's really confusing is that it shifts tracks entirely at about the halfway point, and suddenly you're watching a completely different film.
You are absolutely right, and kind of like this review, because I was still a little confused, like what's going on? What am I on the right track here? But yeah,
that was my point.
Okay. Well, now I understand it, and yes, you're absolutely right, because I was just about as confused as the beginning of this review as I was in the movie, trying to figure out, okay, will something please happen, because I don't know what's going on. This mystery I'm not really into, and something better happen quick.
Wow, that's not at all how I felt about it.
Yeah.
I actually thought what you had was a really solid kids film going on, but one for probably slightly older kids for the first half of this film, or first quarter.
So that would mean that they're not kids.
Well, kids who aren't like 4.
Okay.
It's not a short attention span kids film, like something that you're worried your kids might be running around the movie theater screaming. It's like 9 to 14.
I think it's important that you say that.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not for the little tiny ones.
No, not even slightly. They will be bored out of their minds because this is a slower
or you
paced,
co-host.
or you.
Yes,
this
or
is
me.
a slower paced film, and as it's building, you're wondering where it feels like. Okay, I get it. There's a mystery. It's kids. They're solving it together. But then when it hits a certain point, it turns on its heels and goes, actually, what we're doing is something more like an American cinema paradiso.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the funny thing is, it works in a way where normally with a film, you travel this whole way following a mystery, trying to unravel it. And at the end, you get the answer to the mystery. And you go like, oh, okay. And then lights come on, you go home. With this, you get to the end of the mystery, but then that's just like the last third of the film. It's like, oh, there's a whole lot to this.
And it's so funny that it all seems so anachronistic at first, this whole first part of the film. I mean, there's that confusion. What's going on? What the fuck is happening? This whole thing has changed completely in tone and direction. But then the more I think about it, having come out of the end of it, the more it makes sense, because a lot of this is about magic and the power of illusion. And, it's disconcerting as a film viewer, used to a certain type of film and the way it goes, to watch this movie at first. But as a hardcore cinephile who loves the history of film and appreciates that what Scorsese is trying to do here is send a love letter to the history of film that younger kids might be able to glom onto, that I have to applaud it on that level.
Well, for me, it was like, I imagine Martin Scorsese was probably checking his mail every day, and he didn't get that letter until like a month later. And that's honestly how I felt watching this movie, where I was like, okay, there's a mystery going on. It's revolving around this automaton robot. They're trying to get this thing to work, to do something, and it seemed like the movie spent a whole hour doing that. And by the time they got to do it, I did feel like the kid from the Christmas Story, where I'm just like, okay, remember to drink your Ovaltine, all of that for a crummy commercial.
Which is a great place to actually tell you what the story of this film is about, as much as we can, because, like I said, there's a point in specifics to the point where the film switches gears that it's really important not to reveal what they are, or you miss kind of the magic.
Cyrus, I'm really proud of you.
I was doing that more for your benefit than anybody else.
Doing what?
It's a reminder not to
telling you not to spoil it.
No, now see, you putting me down. I was going to say how much I admire the fact that you've talked about switching tracks with a movie that's in a train station, and moving gears, switching gears with a movie about an automaton that's full of clockwork pieces and gears, and yet you didn't pun about it.
Well, that's the thing, is those are puns. They're just done so in the context of a conversation as to give the entire review a theme matching the film.
Well, you're evolving. You're getting better about it.
You're doing something. I wouldn't call it evolving, but you're doing something.
I'm just not doing what Fozzie Bear does after everyone. Wow!
But tell people.
And yet you're still Statler and Waldorf. All right. So the story here follows Hugo Cabaret, who is a orphaned boy played by Asa Butterfield, who, by the way, is going to be playing Ender in the Ender's Game adaptation, apparently.
All right.
Who is an orphan after his father, who was a clockmaker, died in a never really explained what the
It's a fire.
He died in a fire.
He works in a museum.
Works in a
and
museum.
It catches on fire, and he's killed.
And the kid had lived briefly with his uncle, who was the guy who took care of the big clocks in the local train station, living behind the scenes and, as they say, apartments that everyone else has forgotten is even there. When his uncle just disappears and he's left on his own, and he knows enough from working with his uncle and his father how to fix clocks, so he keeps the time, as it were.
It's basically
in the
he has to
station.
sneak around fixing these clocks to keep up the illusion his uncle is still around.
Yeah,
Otherwise, he'd get thrown in an orphanage.
As well as sneaking around to grab food out in the station, much to the chagrin of a local handicapped inspector played by Sacha Baron Cohen, who's constantly trying to catch him and any other given orphan.
I'll make mincemeat out of that mouth.
But Hugo's real reason for continuing to go is that his father and he had found in the old museum that they were throwing away a broken automaton, which was like a man-shaped or a doll, sort of like maybe about 3 feet tall.
It looked like a small boy.
It's kind of like a robot that has one major function.
Right, a broken automaton.
Yeah.
And he's been trying to fix it. His father was trying to fix it. Now he is continuing to try and fix it.
It's his only connection with his father. He's trying to fix this robot.
But it's all gone off track when he gets caught stealing parts for, to help him fix it by a local shopkeeper named George, played by Ben Kingsley, who is
a mean-ass old man.
Who is a crotchety son of a bitch, who not only catches him, but takes all the shit out of his pocket, little gears and pieces.
Everything he's been collecting for months.
But also a book that his father had been writing down all the pieces of the machine and sort of the plan to put it back together. So Hugo starts following Ben Kingsley's character around absolutely everywhere he goes, going, "Can I have the book? Can 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 I have the book?"
Yeah, and the old man even goes like, "Oh, you want the book? Here you go. Here's the ashes of the book I burned. Now leave me the fuck alone."
But through this, he ends up befriending George's adopted daughter. Is it adopted, right?
Goddaughter.
Or goddaughter, right? Played by Chloe Moretz, who is, she's kind of a waif herself, I suppose. She's orphanish.
Well, her parents are dead also.
But she didn't have that period of nobody's.
Yeah, she immediately went to go live with some people, so Isabel's okay.
So it turns into this sort of I wouldn't even call it like a different movie would have had it be about a gradually burgeoning friendship between the boy and George.
Yeah, right.
And it's not. That's not where it's going. And
it's not Let the Right One In.
No,
it's not that.
They didn't. Even though I have
she's
to
not
admit,
a vampire.
even though watching the movie, I don't know if Let Me In has fucked me up now every time I see that girl, because watching this movie, I'm like, wow, these are the two of the most androgynous kids I could possibly ever see on cinema. Because every time I'm looking at them, I'm like, the girl. There's scenes in there where the girl looks like a boy, and I even think I heard somebody in the crowd go, "Oh, that's a girl." And
that was that drunk dumbass sitting there.
Oh, is that what it was?
Weird
Okay,
fuckhole who was sitting there commenting on every last.
Well, that fuckhole was thinking exactly what I was, and the thing is that I was like,
you fully admit that.
I was like, well, yeah, he said it, but I know. You're absolutely right, fuckhole.
She's not nearly as hot as she was as Hit Girl.
No, and the boy, there's moments where I'm like, is that a girl? What the hell's going on?
That's a weird big eyes.
Yeah, children
thing.
go through that age.
Yeah.
Where they
well, more so than watching this movie, I was like, okay, there's that. I don't know. I feel weird watching this movie right now.
Yeah, well, I didn't get that. I feel like I should call to the FBI perhaps is warranted after we're done with the review.
It was very strange.
Your gender confusion is
it was. I really was. I was like, man, they fit that gender like that goddamn robot. What the fuck is that?
Who was of no particular gender.
No,
there was no
very
clockwork
strange.
penis there.
Yeah, no.
Did it have to be?
But
look, how you gonna crank it up there?
But it's funny, like that. You didn't like that mystery, but I thought the mystery was fantastic about the clockwork thing, because it's creepy. I leaned over to co-host at one point. I'm like, this is how Skynet begins.
I know. It's like the prequel of the Terminator.
Right. Except
steampunk Terminator.
It's not cyberpunk. This is steampunk.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, and that's really, this is the steampunk movie next to another film with Jude Law.
Oh, true.
That is, yeah. I couldn't help but think about that connection too watching it. But but the thing is, at least for me, like I like the ideas that were there, but it seemed like the pace of it was just too slow. It was really going too slow. And when Sacha Baron Cohen, when his character was popping up, even though I thought he was funny throughout the whole movie, it seemed the film just felt disjointed for me. Because I was like, okay, when is this thing really going to pick up? Because there's moments where there's a lot of more reaction involving the characters more than dialogue. I mean, Ben Kingsley, he's spending a good part of the movie saying, "Leave me alone, kid." I mean, and I'm just like, why is this guy so pissed off at this kid? Maybe he has something to do with this, but after a while, it just seemed like it was just tedious.
Well, it's funny because the stuff you're talking about, the place where it slows down in the middle, and it does slow down a lot.
It does. There's no getting around
It's
that.
Disconcerting, even more so when, like I said, you finally figure out what all this is actually all about, what the point of this whole thing, which is ultimately, and like I said, without any specifics, a love letter to the history of film in a very real way. I mean, I as I said, I would compare it. The first thing that popped to my mind was Cinema Paradiso, and Scorsese saying, I want to do an American version of that, but but about a very different part of cinema, a very specific part of it, and dealing with, like I said, magic and illusion and the idea of believing in fantasy, and I think on that level it completely won me over. I mean, once the second half starts, because the first half I'm going, okay, I don't know, it's kind of slowing down, I don't know where this is going. It seems like it wants to be a kids film, but its pacing is not that at all.
Oh, hell no.
Film for kids, and yet the second half, once it's clear what this is really about, admittedly, I think that most critics, I think, are going to grab onto it because of that.
Sure.
Because it is such a direct, oh, look at all this stuff about this period of film we never even talk about. But it enchanted me. I fell in love with it in the second half.
And you're not wrong. I mean, you can't help but feel that way. And that's the part, I mean, if I could say anything really good, that's the part that truly won me over. It seemed like I walked into another theater and I finally saw something that I was really interested in. And I thought they did a fantastic job with that second part, really taking you through that world of this, lost director.
It's interesting for me to hear you guys say this about the film, because I was like, you know what? I don't know how objective I can be, because I love the book. The Invention of Hugo Cabaret by what's
Brian Selznick.
Brian Selznick,
who won a award,
a Caldecott.
Usually reserved for
illustration,
but the book is kind of half illustrations.
Yeah, it's part graphic novel, it's part prose. It's a children's book, huge best.